This is not like pushing a button, a magazine drops out, you put a fresh one in, and you are back in the game. It's break hold, push a lever, swing a gate, pop an op rod, throw a case in, close a thing, and then re-engage.
Well, and then this cylinder is titanium. Because remember, we talked about trigger pull weight. There's the whole mechanism that you have to pull here.
Mm-hmm.
So if we reduce weight of the cylinder itself, that takes less effort.
What is going on, everybody? Mark on the mic. Jim to my right. Mr. Ryan Muckenhern across from us. And also across from us, Mr. Adam Maxwell. Adam, it's
Wheel Gun Wednesday.
It's Wheel Gun Wednesday.
Did you guys do that on purpose?
Yeah, of course. As you can tell, everybody, we are firing on all cylinders right now.
That damn Mark Boardman.
He had that one ready.
Golly. He is... I'd say what you will. Okay.
and you guys do in the comments frequently. Yeah,
Say
I read
what
those.
you will.
You might be right.
I have done this with him hundreds of times, and every time it's just, he just crispy Benjamin and just throws it on the table.
I don't think anyone realizes that he doesn't come in with that.
No.
And we're talking about things completely unrelated all the way leading up to the episode. It's just all of a sudden when we're talking and Mark says, okay, you guys ready? And then he pauses for like 10 seconds and it's just static in the air.
It's formulations.
That's when it happens right there. He gets 10 seconds.
And then I'm trying to like formulate this idea. And then when the countdown gets to 2 seconds, Ryan has to remind me that there's 2 seconds. And then it breaks my train of thought.
Right.
Yeah. That's how these go, by the way. A little peek behind the curtain, everybody. More importantly, though, also behind the curtain, we're actually pre-podcasting. You guys were telling inside jokes, you know.
As we do.
Yeah, as you do.
Talking
about the revolvers on the table, one of which has somewhat of a fun story of recent procurement, Adam. But yes, today we're talking about revolvers and revolver competition. Adam, this is something you and I were chatting the other day.
Yeah.
And you're like, let's talk about revolvers and revolver competition. I said, let's do it. And I knew, Jim, you love revolvers. Ryan, you love revolvers and competition shooting.
I don't do that anymore.
It's not mine.
It's not. I don't. I don't.
He's just been doing it for a friend.
Well, so if you exactly doing it for a friend, because apparently you've given Adam some recent. How are you not doing revolver competition shooting, and yet you've given Adam a lot of really recent advice?
Here's the problem. I've been categorized as a wow guy, not a how guy. So in context, I have some great ideas. I'm like a great idea fairy. And then it's up to somebody else's wallet and time and equipment roster to bring the idea to fruition.
That's very accurate.
And so what happened was...
You're like,
what had happened
you
was...
you are the hypothesis, and Adam is the scientist.
What you did is...
So Adam is, for those of you who don't know, a very multifaceted shooter. And speaking specifically to the sanctioned USPSA realm, Adam is checking off a list of achievements on there, one of which has been left wide open, revolver class.
Well, it's kind of a what now thing.
Yeah.
We obviously talked about how much I like 1911s and single stacks. Like, well, I got Grandmaster and single stack. Well, now what?
Revolver.
It's like, exactly.
Let's get back in the time machine.
So it was, I would say, I would not classify myself as a revolver guy. I haven't had a whole lot of interest in revolvers for most of my shooting career. However, when I first started, one of my first inspirations into the action shooting sports, I came from hunting, right? And so my dad was not a big hunter. He's a once-a-year deer hunter. Like, he would go day and a half opening weekend. That was hunting in our house. And I'm a bit of a deep dive personality, so I dove into hunting harder than that. And so, by the time I was 12, 13 years old, I had 2 or 3 subscriptions to magazines, and I had found TNN Outdoors had TV shows about hunting.
Oh, man, yeah.
This was a new thing back then. Like, it was a 4-hour block of time on Sunday night. And on the tail end of that, they had a show called American Shooter, which was about other things. Like everything about like guns in my childhood was linked to hunting or pest control, or like the shooting sports wasn't part of it. And that show opened my eyes to a lot of what was out there in the shooting sports. And in 1999, one of those episodes was when they showed Jerry Micklick setting the most famous records that he's famous for 8 shots in under a second. He did it 8 shots in under a second on one target, 8 shots under a second on 4 targets, and then he did 6 reload 6 in 2.99. And that was kind of the aha moment of the wide world of sports for me, and started me down the trail. And so despite that being like a key inspiration for me, I never really liked revolvers. I was a 1911 guy. But I got to this point in my career, and I kind of always, when I got to the later stages, it was something I'd like to try someday, but there's a burden of entry. Like, I can buy the gun pretty easy, especially when I was working at the store. Like, yeah, investing in the gun, no problem. But to chase this, you got to buy the gun, the belt, the holster, the magazine or the ammo caddy, the clips. You got to do a whole nother caliber. Like, the whole enchilada was what kept me out of it for a long time. And then recently, I got to this point where I was like, oh, what now? And last year, there's one big single stack match still going on in the U.S., the Western States single stack, Rio Salado. And at that match, it's a very single stack centric match, which also makes it a very revolver friendly match. Turns out they do a revolver match the day before that event. So I was there watching those guys do it. I'm like, that kind of looks like fun. And that's kind of what got me off the fence to give it a try this winter. Because, watching Jerry's career and him being an inspiration is like, man, I wanted to try that. And I think that's kind of interesting too, because he started the same way. It was Ed McGivern before him, right? And he was in the bayous of Louisiana. Hunting season wasn't long enough for him. He found exhibition shooting. He bought Ed's book, and then he started replicating Ed's records and beating him. So just kind of generationally, I think it's interesting. But that initial thing that he did with revolvers was very, very eye-opening for me. And so it's kind of like, well, we're going to give this an exploration. And that's kind of what led us here. But that was kind of my intro into revolver shooting. Right now, it's kind of on the peripheries of our sport, but as people dig into kind of niche stuff and they're kind of looking, they start chasing the dragon and trying to find other niche things to do in the sport. This is kind of one of the more obscure ones.
About as niche as it gets.
Yeah, it's pretty different.
Yeah.
Is it seeing like a what am I trying to say? Like a resurgence? Like, I feel like like lever guns kind of made like a resurgence with maybe a little bit of a modern twist, but I think that also fueled like even people's interest in like, more traditional lever guns. Like, are we seeing any of that with revolvers right now?
I think my theory on it is that the generation before Ryan and I, they're kind of the generation that grew up on the Western movies.
Mm-hmm.
The Western movies were begot from the generation before them. That was essentially their childhood. They were 1 degree of separation away from somebody who had experienced the Wild West. The greatest generation, the West was either still kind of a tamer wild place, but like Grandpa lived it. Mm-hmm. So they were thinking about the Old West in ways that we think about the 90s. And so
90s.
The revolvers were kind of coming that way, and that generation, like right before Ryan, those were the guys that still kind of had a romantic connection to it because it kind of reminds them of that era. I think the resurgence we're seeing now, or the interest you're seeing in it now, is a generation that came to the shooting sports from video games. And so they jumped right into the high capacity, optics ready, compensated. They want to shoot a lot of targets really fast. That was their attraction to the sport, but they also, similar to me, they kind of got to this place where like, okay, I got this handled. What else is there? And they start exploring some of this other stuff. They start exploring the iron-sighted guns, the lower capacity guns, and the wheel guns maybe eventually.
To speak to revolvers and a resurgence, I don't know that there is necessarily one. At a time, like, okay, so if you had a 6-shot 38 or 6-shot 357, that could be considered standard issue for a police officer. At one time, it was standard issue for the military. That era kind of died in probably 1985, and then there was only just a few vestigial holdovers or carryovers that went on, and widely and wildly displaced by the auto pistol. There's still a hunting contingency that appreciates wheel guns, but that too has diminished. When you look at the utility of the firearm, it's undisputed. When you look at the accuracy potential, it's undisputed. But when you have cartridges like 10 millimeter auto, or even auto pistols like the Desert Eagle and 44 mag, 50 Action Express, etc., or the rebirth of the Coonan in 357.
Coonan.
Yeah. It took a lot away from it.
What is the Coonan?
Coonan's a 1911 sort of in 357. It's more
its
of a
creator is native to Ryan and I's homeland.
It's more of an offshoot of pistol from AMT. That was like a single stack 59 series Smith & Wesson, idealized for a Magnum cartridge. But like revolvers in general, I don't see people talking about them as the most viable defense tool. I don't see people carrying them for bare defense. I see a lot of SIG 220s. I see a lot of Glock 20s, Glock 40s, and 1911s chambered in 10 auto, more so. We do not talk to a lot of customers about revolvers. Every so often somebody will say, hey, I got a Smith 629. I want to hunt deer, bear, pigs, etc. with it. What red dot do I put on it? But it's unfortunately dying out.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say for a lot of my life, like I fished in Alaska pretty extensively, a lot when I was younger, like, a kid. But bear protection was a 44 mag revolver.
Yep.
But you do see that less now. A lot of the guys are opting for 10 millimeter autos and even 9s at times.
And I think there's sound logic in it too, and it's going to be interesting to get Adam's take on it from the competitor's standpoint. Like, everything about the auto pistol is more conducive to rounds on target, and I'm going to say more accurately. That's not to take away from accuracy of a wheel gun. But there's just like physically less manipulation of the trigger. Like, so Adam's trigger pull can be measured in millimeters on his competition pistols. Adam's trigger pull will be measured in large fractions of inches in his revolver. Like, there's a lot of take up and travel. There's a whole new part of like biomechanics that Adam's going to have to sort out to become a competent and extremely competitive wheel gun shooter. Those same things, moving it into the hunter or the personal protection, not even talking about capacity yet. All those things, when you start auditing them next to an auto pistol of any variety, Glock SIG, a 1911-esque pistol, etc., they're all at a major detriment in comparison, right? And so, like, yeah, you would look at the auto pistols. Oh yeah, it's a better mousetrap, and I think that depends. You're going to make concessions too, like a 10 millimeter, even with those super powerful barrel loads, is not a 44 Remington Magnum, period. Then again, carrying a Desert Eagle Mark 19 is not as nice as carrying a Glock 20. So, pick your battles.
Am I the only one who remembers like 10 years ago when revolvers got pretty big, pretty quick?
There was a
blip.
Yeah.
And it was when we were in a period of the Wild West amongst handguns.
Yeah.
And lots of people were starting to get, now what I just described, what was that? 10 years ago was 2014. Or there was, of course, 2008 to like 2012 was like, big time for people to start getting a lot of guns. And I just think that nobody knew what to get.
Yep.
And it was like, people were getting anything. The world of ARs was still a little bit more murky than it is today. When it came to handguns, we were in Glock Gen 3, and like those were just kind of taking off, and maybe people starting to like customize them, thinking about putting optics on. Like there was pandemonium. But I remember a lot of people were coming out with probably about as modern of revolvers as you can get. Smith's had, that. They had, just M&P revolvers in general. There was, I'm not going to act like it was new at that point because I don't think it was. But people were talking about like Taurus Judges and, like it was, it was just for like a very brief period of time. I remember I was about to get a revolver. Just because I just thought they were cool, and I still think that they're awesome.
A couple of those that you mentioned really were the keynote pieces too. So Smith's Night Guard series, which were cool, like neat, well thought out, intelligent, defensive handguns.
And they looked the part amongst the other black plastic guns.
Correct.
Normally you get revolvers and they were like shiny, like mirror finish, wood grips. You wouldn't think like, oh yeah, I'm going to shoot a bad guy in an alleyway with that thing. But then when they started coming out with like in black with black grips, Crimson Trace laser grip, like all this stuff, you're thinking like, oh no, tritium sights.
Yeah.
Like,
There was that. There was
light Picatinny things. Yeah.
There was the Smith X frames, so 500 Smith & Wesson and 460 Smith & Wesson. That breathed a ton of life into revolver fanaticism. And then the Taurus Judge, albeit my opinion, a total novelty. I sold a pile of Taurus Judges.
That's like a Swiss Army pistol.
And they sold so many of them that Smith & Wesson had to come out with something kind of comparable. Governor.
That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about
like a
that.
handheld miniature blunderbuss.
You could tell like they didn't want to, but it's like, man, we can't not. So here you go.
I remember a period of time when it was like how many 6-inch and how many, I think they were 4-inch.
Yeah.
Judges are 8-inch and 4-inch. Do we order? It's like, I don't know.
Federal's loading special 410 cartridges with special little wafers in them.
How many will they allow us to buy?
Yeah. And that was, I think, both the beginning and the end of that blip. And
have you guys shot the shot shells out of those?
Oh, yeah.
I've never shot one.
Yeah, we spent at my ski club that I shot fairly local to me. We spent the better part of a case that's 10 boxes of 25, 250 shells total. The better part of a case trying to figure out leads for an American skeet target with a Taurus Judge. And I'm going to tell you, it's an act of futility. You can eventually do it, and it's a parlor trick. But it was,
I can only imagine it's like a single BB that's...
No, I mean, it...
Well, the pattern just must
was terrible.
Suck.
They had very shallow rifling, but enough rifling that it would just spin that shot column.
I mean, the only thing that I have, or the only personal example I have of shooting shot out of a pistol. So my dad had, I think it was a Ruger Red Hawk 44, and he had those snake shot things. And there was a grouse in a tree rind where a gentleman shoots a grouse.
Fact.
From about here to the wall behind you. We're talking like 5 yards, and just pow.
Nothing.
Yes. Just the grouse is just bobbing his head up and down like, what the heck is going on over? That thing's loud. Yes, it was ineffective.
Yeah, and the 410 wheel gun is marginally more effective than that. But
was it
up close,
was it
though?
Taurus?
Can you imagine?
It's a mess.
Ugh.
Ugh. Was it Taurus who had the Rhino too?
No, that was Chiappa.
Chiappa had the Rhino?
Yep.
Now, what was, and that thing had like an internal in it, like
its barrel. Its barrel was
like
below.
Downward. Yeah.
So instead of the top dead center cylinder firing, it was the bottom dead center cylinder firing.
That was during that came out in that time period too,
Yeah.
and it was just like all of a sudden it was like everybody was coming out with these oddball, unique, different revolvers, and then it went away as quickly as it appeared.
Jim, would you equate that to like the early 90s cars era?
What?
Like you always talk about, like I think it's like the early 90s cars where like they would just like put an electronic thing like on a car, and it was just kind of wild. Like it was kind of like the Wild West of cars, I guess.
it was sort of the Wild West of stuff. The 80s and 90s were the Wild West of luxuries as we know them today.
Okay.
Like, people act like it's such a big deal that they have a touch screen in a car now. Well, they don't act like it's a big deal anymore, but there was a period, again, 10 years ago where they had a touch screen. It's like Buick had a touch screen in a car in the 80s.
Oh. I guess
But,
that wasn't a good comparison on my part.
But no. I'm just
It's
glad you
fine.
brought it up because
It's fine.
you've re-engaged me.
To,
And he's back, people.
And we're back. We're talking about cars. Yeah, but that was almost like the Revolver's scout rifle
Yep.
deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Scout rifle, man. That one just keeps on crawling.
Yeah,
Burned
that
hot
one's
and then
that
kind of
just
smolders.
Still clawing away.
that's like the zombie in Resident Evil. You just keep shooting, and you're just like,
Nothing
it's
happens.
still not
Still
dead.
there.
It's still
Can't.
coming.
Yeah.
If we get enough comments in the comments section to do a Razor Scout Scope, maybe we'll think about it happening.
Why would you do that?
The problem is that only
It's for the algorithm, Ryan.
Yeah, the problem is that only 0.02% of the people who comment requesting it will actually go out and pony up and buy it.
That's what I tell the people. who
Generally
ask
how
me.
it works with basically everything that we get requests for.
The competitive side of things, though, when I started shooting USPSA, well, semi-formally, there was 5 shooters at the club that shot. They all shot Smith 625 jams, which is a now discontinued gun. So to talk to Resurgency, and what I think not, they dropped that gun. It's no longer a cataloged item.
Dang.
Yeah. And whether that's, I speculate either low sales numbers or pistols like Adams that he's got that represent a better tool for that. And you'll have to speak to,
Part of what happened there is the game changed a little bit.
Yeah.
There was a rule that essentially a stage designer couldn't present more than 3 targets in a view. You can dig into that if you want to. But like you couldn't have more than 3 targets in a view so that stages would remain revolver neutral.
Yeah.
oh.
So you wouldn't be here with 12 targets to shoot and one dude would just be standing because that's not fun.
Kinda like
it's kind of
beige.
like it's kind of like a bad golf course.
It's neutral.
So that was a rule, but also the sport was kind of evolving away. People were like, we want to shoot more guns more fast. And so they made it, okay, now it's 4 targets per array, more of a single stack neutral. So like you can have reasonably expect there to be 8 shots in a view, which essentially made the major power factor pistols, the ones shooting the larger caliber, getting more points, put them at a disadvantage because even though they were getting more points, they were standing flat-footed in a 4-target array, and so people would run circles around. So competitors started going away and pretty much looked at revolver as a minor power factor class. So the minor power factor revolvers were the only ones that were selling. So now a super popular niche revolver went out of vogue, and they weren't buying them anymore. Honestly, it was the one I wanted. Like that was the one I would like to shoot, but it's just kind of
you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
So and to speak to this power factor thing, effectively it's 45 ACP versus anything else in a revolver.
Yeah.
So the examples on the table here is the 929. Or is it
we have a
927?
929 in 9mm, and we have a 627 in 357.
So those cartridges, 357 notwithstanding though, because you could hit major with that.
Not by the rules, because there's a bullet diameter.
Oh yeah, caliber.
So,
yeah. You pick up 2 rounds.
Yeah, you get 2 rounds,
Yep.
but you're giving up some points.
So 8-round capacity.
Yeah.
Which is significant, right?
It's huge.
Yes. And so when Adam's talking about being flat-footed with a reload there, this is not like pushing a button, a magazine drops out, you put a fresh one in, and you are back in the game. It's break, hold, push a lever, swing a gate, pop an op rod, throw a case in, close a thing, and then re-engage.
Yeah, so where an 8-shot revolver, they could do all that on the way to the next array. You would be stuck there doing all that flat-footed, trying to reload for that one last target before you could leave.
Gotcha.
In a foot race
Now,
sport.
With major, because it's been so long, because I can't remember, I would often see like Marky P, he shot 625. He would, depending on target counts, he would just single A zone.
It doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
No.
So that rule has also changed?
Yeah.
Okay. So it used to be in this, if you had one in the A with major, you were free and clear, right? You could have an alpha and a Mike, and you'd still obtain all points for that target. So if he was in that situation, he'd be like A zone, A zone, A zone, and then either reload for the next array that was going to run him dry, or pick up a target that would keep him from running dry, or he would prioritize targets based on how many rounds he thought he would need to neutralize it if it was a partially obscured or hard covered target. But
Yep.
Mark, you following all this competition talk?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's chess, not checkers.
Are the revolver
in
guys
revolvers.
shooting against like single stack guys? Are they shooting against double stack? Are they shooting against anybody? Or are they only shooting amongst themselves? How's this work? Like,
Generally speaking,
is it the same? Are they running the same stages? Are they all at the same match? They run the same.
Yeah.
Can you
So
explain some of this stuff?
everybody is in the match together. The scores are divided up so that birds of a feather flock together. So open people are over here, single stack people are over there, and every little different class that there is score wise. But in the match, everybody shoots together. So it's a squad of 10
okay.
people, and because there may be 2 for this division, 10 for that division, 4 for this division. So everybody's kind of together, but when the scores all come out, technically, you're just shooting against people who are playing the game the way you're playing, but there's also overall results too. So you can see how you stack up against other people with other equipment. And like Ryan's kind of alluding to, when we first started, around 2010 era, it was not uncommon to see 5 dudes out of 80 show up with some revolvers. They're around, they're a minority. That has become much and much less. I would say, if one person shows up with a revolver, and usually it's a guy who shoots an auto pistol, but for whatever reason he decided
today's the day.
I wanted to get this out and try it, kind of thing. Or sometimes we'll get a group together. Is going to happen here at Vortex this winter. A guy was like, I would really like to do a low capacity match because it's his birthday, So we're gonna emphasize the divisions that are lower capacity divisions, where most people would typically shoot open, limited, carry optics. Okay, well, if you have a single stack gun, other people are bringing single stack guns. Bring your single stack guns. Bring your production guns. Bring your revolvers. We're all gonna it's kind of like a theme party.
Yeah.
It's like you can come to our party, but it's a toga party, so you're going to be kind of left out if you don't also have a toga.
Yeah, it's funny when you were mentioning that. I remember when open was an eclectic division.
Same.
And,
yeah.
And at the time, I remember 3 open shooters: Tommy D,
Yeah.
Matt, and Bob.
Yeah.
That was it.
Open was action shooting retirement.
Yeah, maybe
when
Dallas.
when you couldn't see iron sights anymore, and you probably were successful enough in your career that you had money, you bought a really expensive open gun, and so you couldn't run fast anymore, but you could shoot this really loud gun really fast.
So funny enough, both divisions, they're as far apart in polarity as one could be with a firearm. They also have the highest barrier to entry from just cost of operations and equipment.
Yep.
Right. That's interesting. And now open is very, very, very top heavy, right? There's a lot of players in open, or
in 3-gun,
Yeah.
in 3-gun, it's becoming or is the biggest division. In the pistol specific sports, I would say it's maybe 3rd or 4th.
Sure.
Because the carry optics and limited optics, just barrier for entry is less.
Yeah.
So a lot of people live there first, and they kind of need a reason to go somewhere else.
Well, are people living there because they're practicing what's practical in their daily life as well, or no?
Maybe.
I think the open guns, though, just it's not like their cost to entry has stayed the same over time. It's it's only just gone up and up and up as people just keep coming up. So it's if you want to go play with the open guys because you're like, oh yeah, no rules, great, I can do whatever I want.
7, 8,
it's
9 grand.
Pony up, dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely it hasn't become really easier.
And I think part of it too, I have this theory too, and I'm going to apologize for anybody that I have set that's my friend out there. But there's a spectrum of people. There's gun guys and there's shooters. The more of a shooter you tend to be, the less you know about guns or even care about guns, like 929, 627, Glock 17. Collect them all. You know, they're less like Pokemon in their guns, trying to grab them all. They want to play the game. They were inspired by, I want to shoot a lot of targets really fast. They got a gun that they could do that with, and they like latched onto it. And I would say the last 2 generations or so of shooters, like they latch onto whatever gun they liked first, and they stay there for a long time until they get bored with it, and then they start to think about other stuff. Where I think when we were getting into the sport was still primarily gun guys. It was guys who had a lot of pistols, and they were kind of like, hey, here's where we can go play with our pistols. You know, and I like this pistol the best, so that's kind of the one I focus on. But every once in a while I like to play with these other ones. So I think where our peers, when we were first starting, it was not uncommon that people had equipment and guns to shoot, let's say, 50 to 75% of the different equipment divisions. I would say people that show up on any given Sunday right now, they have equipment to shoot 1, maybe 2 divisions. And if they were going to switch divisions, they would be buying completely other gear. Whereas before, it's kind of like, well, they already kind of halfway had most of the stuff because the sport was a little bit more gun guys. Same thing with 3-gun. Like it was a gun guy thing. Like we have rifles, shotguns, and pistols. How cool would it be to like just shoot all of them at once? Then the sport got super athletic. And those guys got older. And so, like, you know what sounds like a lot of fun? PRS. You know, we're just going to sit here, wait our turn, and then go up to the line, we'll shoot 10 times, and then we'll sit back down. Like that, you know. So I think we're seeing the kind of evolution away from gun guys and into people who like to shoot, and they don't necessarily care about the stuff as much.
Or they're hyper specialized.
Yeah.
And that's spot on too. I remember especially like some of the higher end race guns, the SVs and the Limcats.
Yeah.
And when you start looking like especially an SV or a Limcat, and you're like, that pistol costs 3 times more than my truck cost me.
The white Silverado.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
Ryan, can you? I'm not familiar with either of those.
So SV and Limcat.
Think
Or
of
a
them as
white
one-off custom shops.
The Silverado, I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
I
know,
don't have one, but I know
it's
what that is.
It's Lamborghini.
Yeah. So
okay.
we're talking.
So it's a 2011 style pistol, but it's built on the high end of tolerance and also flash and flare.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And like,
Gold leaf.
if you saw a fellow with an SV, he started at probably $5,500,
Mm-hmm.
And waited 2 years.
Yeah, and that's before. It just depends. I mean, you could have it any way you want it.
And you drove up in a Testarossa.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would be cool, but
That would be cool.
Where most of us were running, you know, in the street legal class of racing, these were purpose-built race cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what brought Adam to revolvers.
And here we are at Revolvers.
Here we are. What have you been up to with these
What a
revolvers
circle.
lately?
Yeah. So, like I say, I'm our season in the upper Midwest primarily goes indoors in the winter, which kind of shrinks down the possibilities as far as like what stage design looks like, how elaborate things are, and whatnot. So I tend to. And I don't love the idea of dropping 2011 mags on concrete. I mean, they'll do it, but only for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So I just take it as an opportunity to cross train on lower capacity stuff. And so every year I kind of pick one that I'm going to play with. So this year I picked revolvers, and so I knew that the store I worked with or used to work for, they had this one. The term is shelf rot. It's similar to lot rot for car dealers. Like, you know, if it sits around long enough and it's coming up on a birthday, if something's been sitting on the shelf for a whole year, you can start to be like, hey, man, you tired of putting that thing away yet? And so I got a good deal on the revolver. And so then...
And which one is that?
This is a Smith & Wesson 627 Pro Series.
Okay.
So it's an 8-shot, 357.
What was wrong with it then? Why don't people want
just
it?
not popular. Revolvers just aren't that
revolver,
popular. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, and it's a more obscure version of a revolver. People are like, oh, what's a moon clip? We'll get there. So then I started essentially acquiring all the stuff. So, you know, when you if you're going to shoot a gun in the game, you have to get a belt rig too. We've talked about that before. So I need to get the holster. I need to get the rack for the ammo. So in revolver shooting in competition, we use what's called a moon clip. So think of it as belted ammunition for a machine gun. If anybody's played around with those, how it all kind of hard clips together. Same thing here. You have a circular device that all of the cartridges clip into, and then there's a rack on the front of your belt with a magnet that holds them all there for you to grab. So you load this thing up with all your clips, and that's how you go through the course, just ripping them off the top there. So getting all that equipment squared away has been a project, and then this ammo, because revolvers are more obscure than they used to be, the ammo is kind of, while 357-38 is a popular cartridge, like on the scale of cartridges, it is exponentially less popular than it used to be. And so I was trying to figure out, doing the math in my head, I'm like, there has to be a way, especially since Smith & Wesson came out with a 929, so there's a way to shoot 9mm through a revolver. How hard, but the configurations they make this revolver in, I'm just not interested in. I wanted a shorter barrel. So I'm like, how do I shoot 9mm through a 357? And I'm not entirely convinced there isn't a way yet.
I mean, you can do it.
We can do it.
Yeah.
Start stuffing.
But I was talking to my friend Ryan, and I use that term loosely. He said what you need is 38 short cold.
Yes.
And I was like, 38 short what?
Yes.
38 short cold. I'm like, no, not 350, not 38 Smith & Wesson. He's like, no, 38 short cold.
And what Adam's talking about right now is the suggestions that I was alluding to much earlier in the podcast that Ryan was making to Adam.
Yeah. So Ryan, king of obscure calibers, is like, oh, you need to check out this 38 short cold. I'm like, what's that? He's like, it's basically a rimmed 9mm. So originally, back in the Dizzy, when cartridges were a new thing, we were going from cap and ball revolvers to metallic centerfire cartridges. The 38 short Colt is the black powder cartridge base that became 357 Magnum. All right, so they did 38 short Colt, or they did 38 short Colt. Then they did a 38 long, or actually it was just called 38 Colt. That was a black powder cartridge as well. And then they made it a little bit longer. That became 38 Special. And then it became a bit longer. That was 357.
Oh, they did another one.
Yes, 357 maximum.
Yes.
Oh.
Still want to get one of those. Anyway.
So this cartridge is essentially the black powder cousin of modern day 38 Special 357. But they needed to keep increasing case capacity to get the velocities they wanted. Well, full circle, our powders are now much more efficient.
Okay, right.
So now, you put, in here I have about 2/3 of the load that I would use for 9mm Luger. And now it's just a short, efficient revolver cartridge with a rim on it so that it works in a revolver. And for all you at home, these are dummy cartridges that I made. It's just a case with a bullet on it, no primer, no powder. But so it has a rim on it so that the revolver ejector can lift on it, where a rimless cartridge like 9mm or 45 would not. It would need a moon clip for that ejector to push on. And so Ryan got me into 38 short Colt, which went into the whole deep dark hole of black powder revolver cartridges on YouTube. But we did all that because
I just had a premonition.
yeah.
Adam, after you complete this journey, you enter SASS.
Maybe. But
I'm not even saying that joking. Like it just has to happen.
well, election's in 30 days, so but we load it all into this moon clip, and for the game, so you can load the whole thing into the revolver as one package, and then you shoot it, and then it all comes out. But because you have eight cylinders trying to go into 8 round holes, the shorter this can be, the better.
Okay.
So that was where we went chasing after this obscure obscure cartridge, because essentially it's the same thing but shorter, which makes it easier to load from a moon clip into a revolver.
So I was going to ask what the why was, and it's just gaining a little bit of speed there then?
Yep, a little bit more speed and consistency when you're trying to suggest this thing go in there, and how much does it line up, because they each have a little bit of a mind of their own of where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And then the longer they are, the larger of a radius they could be. So the tighter and shorter of a package you can get it into, the more likely it is to just fall into the cylinder.
That's the one thing I always notice when watching some of those Jerry Mitchell record shots, is just the way that guy makes a moon clip go into the gun. Is you have to watch it back to actually confirm that he wasn't just joking, miming.
If you watch the
operation.
super slow-mo, like it hangs there for a while and then it starts to slide down, and it's a thing.
Yeah, when you watch the slow-mo, it's not that impressive.
Jared does possess a certain level of mind control, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are just things that he can do for him that seem mundane and everyday that a room full of 10 of the most capable could never. I remember that April Fool's one that he did where he took took a dash of powder, a bullet, a case, and a primer, put his hands, an ounce loaded ammo. I think it's real.
Yeah, he did that.
Yeah. Watching him chuck a moon clip into a cylinder, and somehow every single time it's just brilliant.
And part of this thing too has been finding all these kind of obscure things that you need.
Mooner, demooner.
So
And this is a fantastic tool you've been using.
And
I
this is where
I thought it was part. I asked Adam if he'd brought part of a meat grinder.
I thought it was one of those things you use to determine the, whatever.
And when I
Wetness,
decided
the
to
wetness
do this,
level of your crop. Why am I forgetting a word?
Hydrometer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
That's what you do with syrup.
that is true. You're looking for water content. Yeah, that's not what this is, though.
No.
No.
when I started doing this, I'm like, gosh, I hope some of these companies are still in business. like there were some
valid though.
cool tools, but it's like, man, I don't know if they survived. So this is a mooner demooner tool. So we have a moon clip, the actual spring steel clip that would hold all the cartridges. This is caliber and gun specific.
Caliber and gun. So this wouldn't necessarily work in what?
In a Ruger. No way.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
So there's different ones for different models. It's got little bitty magnets on it. So you put the clip on here, and then you load the cartridges in like you would a revolver cylinder. And a lot of the other tools, I was really glad I found this one, because a lot of the other tools they moon cartridges or they demoon cartridges. Rarely do they do both. This one does both. So on one side, if I put the top half on here and I spin it, now all the cartridges are in the moon clip.
Wild.
So they're all clipped in there. I mean, you can chuck this thing around and you might bend the clip, but they're not coming out of there. And then if you flip the cap around the other way, it pops them all out of there again, and they're all individual.
Would you look at that?
Cartridges.
Some sleight of hand right there, Fred.
I was just about to say, that's like magic.
Fantastic.
And I'm an old soul, but I'm 13 at the same time. I could just play with this tool all day long.
It's pretty neat.
That'd be just fine.
That is absolutely
blame
the best example of mooner demooner that are out there.
Yep.
Because some of those rascals are one at a time.
That is a that's a grown man's fidget spinner right there.
Oh, yeah. My girlfriend's like, you're a dork. I'm like, yep. Deal with it. You chose this.
So what I
true.
love about this the most, though, is the competitor in Adam is omnipresent and always thinking. So you have a wheel gun, you're at a deficiency. What do you do to make it better? You add a moon clip. How do you make it better yet? You load your moon clips with more ammo and more quicker. But then, Adam, you get a much shorter variant of the case that is still acceptable and legal in the division, so that you can eliminate a couple of tenths a second, a reload, maybe. And you end up loading that gun faster, back on target faster, unloading that gun faster, which is a thing. So Adam's stroke he has more of a chance of clearing the cylinder on the unload than
Yeah, so he's talking about when you push the ejector, how far do you have to push it before these things fall out? 'Cause
Right.
when they're empty, they're expanded.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
They're expanded against the case wall, so they don't just fall out of there like when they're loaded.
So like when I used to shoot tactical shotgun, I shot manual division, so I shot a pump gun. Well, we did what was called a short stroke mod to the gun. So I'm not intentionally short stroking my gun, but under the duress of time and the course, if I'm in an unusual position and I'm manipulating a manually actuated shotgun, if I half stroked it, it's actually more of like a 5/8 stroke, I would eject a shell onto my lifter and could load back up and I'd mitigate risk. This is mitigating risk. And then
Sure.
in adding, or I should say subtracting time to the sequence. The rest is all on you, man. You got to figure out how to pull that.
Oh, yeah, you call up Dylan and be like, hey, dude, I need a die set for 38 short Colt. And they're like, what?
What are you up to?
The number you've reached has been disconnected.
Since 1912.
Yeah. So really you're using a 38 sizer, and the rest of it is basically 9mm dies. That's essentially what you're doing here.
Curious enough about
That
the
is
case,
fun.
not to make this a cartridge talk. This is the dimensional equivalent of, as Adam mentioned earlier, a rimmed 9mm. So it's a 19mm case.
Really?
Yep. And with a rim.
Okay.
Yep. Technically different bullet diameter.
That would explain, yeah.
Fun fact, actually, the Smith & Wesson revolvers that are head stamped 9mm, this barrel is actually a 357 barrel. So real I-Core and USPSA guys who are trying to get some accuracy out of these things, they're like, I mean, yeah, they shoot 9mm, but they're like, you got to load 38 bullets on 9mm cases so that you really engage the lens and get good velocity and good spin.
So
Get
isn't
accuracy.
this already doing that then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
A lot of those guys will shoot cast as well, or coated. These are plated. Are these extremes?
These are berries.
Berries. Yeah. So it's a plated bullet. They're very soft. They play like cast, but they don't come with all the cast problems.
Okay.
No grease, no smear.
Now, these guns are both 8-shot, right?
Yes.
I mean, for wheel guns, that's pretty up there in capacity.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of,
There is a 10-rounder.
yeah, I was going to say, was that a Smith & Wesson?
Yep. Smith
And
&
that
Wesson
was their-
617.
Wasn't that,
22.
Oh,
that was 22. Oh, okay.
because essentially they're using the frame of a 44 and cylinder, and then they're drilling a smaller hole in it. So when you drill smaller holes in a 44 cylinder, you can get more of them.
Makes sense.
So that's an interesting distinction about this gun. Adam said that's a frame of a 44. If you pick up a Smith & Wesson 686, it's a physically smaller gun. This gun is large. It's big.
Yeah, it is.
Adam, before the podcast, and Ryan, you touched on this early in the podcast, but we were talking about splits and time and the trigger pull being pretty dramatically different than pistols, auto pistols that you'd be shooting in competition. What are the differences? Let's talk maybe a little bit more about that trigger pull and what's happening, and maybe some other differences that you're contending with that you're either having to relearn or modify what you're doing to effectively shoot that pistol.
You just pull it once and then
Just fan it, baby.
that's what
Can
I
be
do.
done. That's a whole other YouTube channel. But I think what's different about it is kind of also what keeps people out of it. First would be it's a double action trigger pull every time. There are some successful auto pistols where they have a double action pull the first time, right? And I think at the beginner intermediate level, a lot of people kind of think that is a throwaway shot. Like, or they're trying to use a wide open target really close, or they're just kind of planning on shooting again. Like, they kind of consider it a wasted shot because they perceive it to be difficult. I was shooting a little bit of carry optics production, with a double single gun. And so I kind of learned that, well, the double action pull isn't something really to be afraid of. So there is first barrier for entry. Second barrier for entry is the reloads.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and that's a big one, but that's also kind of why you do it. Like, you want to kind of play with the gun, So the learning the reloads is the next biggest thing. But I think what's unique about revolvers compared to auto pistols is auto pistols are always reciprocating, right? So the slide's going back and forth. It's feeding cartridges. There's brass coming out. When you shoot a revolver, it's a lot more like a dead blow hammer on an anvil. So like a blacksmith's hammer, when they hit an anvil, the point of an anvil is that the hammer doesn't bounce, right? So it comes down, boom, and it stops. Or if you play baseball and you hit a baseball and you hit it right in the sweet spot of your bat, and you hit it just perfect, feels completely different than if you hit it
just effortless,
a little subprime. Like that perfect strike of a baseball on a baseball bat. That's what a revolver feels like when you shoot it. It's more of a dead blow recoil impulse than an auto pistol. And that's pretty cool in a properly tuned cartridge with a good trigger and all that stuff. So I think that was some of the attraction to it. And then also what's different about it that's intellectually interesting / challenging is because they're all double action pulls. If you think about, like, a lot of people struggle when they shoot with flinching, right? When when we're trying to shoot groups, they're aiming, and they're trying to make it happen now. Okay, well, that's on a trigger that moves a fraction of an inch, and it's a couple pounds. Here's one that moves about a half an inch, and it weighs about 12 pounds.
Yeah.
All right, so you have the perfect storm for a flinch and all the things that make a flinch. And so if what the spot that you're visualizing on the target is about the size of the bullet, and the acceptable wobble zone or the acceptable accuracy is a little bit bigger, and then the wobble zone that the pistol is moving in is bigger, essentially you have to start initiating the shot before the sight picture is ready. And so like the train has kind of left the station as you're trying to control this thing, but it's also kind of happening ready or not. And so the challenge is learning to prep that long trigger and be in control of that long ignition sequence, kind of like a flintlock. Also, when you shoot a flintlock musket, you pull the trigger and there's a boom,
Right.
Same thing here. I'm starting to pull the trigger much sooner than I would on an auto pistol before the shot actually happens. So managing all that at a high rate of speed, the slower it is, the faster it happens in your mind, right? Whereas like it happens almost imperceivably fast in an auto-loading pistol with a short trigger. The slower this all happens, but you try to do it fast, like the more dialed into it you are, like under kind of an adrenaline-induced experience, Kind of life happens in slow motion.
Yeah, the first real competitive wheel gun shooter that I ever knew, Adam and my mutual friend, I was like, wait, what was the big breakthrough for you in wheel guns when he started getting like nationally competitive with them? And he goes, figuring out how to pull the trigger between targets on a target array.
Oh, sure.
And so as he's on one target, he like breaks a shot and he starts transitioning to the next target, figuring out the timing sequence based on target distance, gap between targets, and his pull to land a zone when he came through that trigger speed.
Timing it up.
And that's a big hurdle to get across, because that's what I got across shooting a single action pistol. Coming out of the holster, you're starting to pull the trigger. I mean, it's halfway pulled before you get there.
Yeah.
That's in a controlled environment and everything, but still like it's beat into your head so much, on target, ready to shoot before you pull the trigger. Well, now it's kind of like I need to start making that happen sooner and being in control of that whole sequence before you actually get to the target. So same thing. If there's a target over here, there's a target over here, shot, and then trigger is halfway pulled by the time you get here, and so that it's culminating when you arrive at target, not you're at target and you're waiting for it to happen.
That is somewhat tangential. Every time I've been around shooters of Adam's caliber, like one of the more fascinating things about them is they have the ability to what I call explore the seconds between seconds. And where most of us mere mortals, it just happens so fast we never see it. Like really good archery shooters as well. Like micro corrections that are so tiny compared to what we would figure the subtlest movement they can back in or out of before breaking the shot, or in Adam's case, like just seeing where there's a gap between targets that either allows or disallows time and exploiting it or avoiding it. And it's just wild.
One, I think I hate to indulge in that, but like the seconds between seconds. So if you learn to live in the half seconds between seconds, right? That's the magic of that whole thing. Then you get to a place where that's normal. Like you're comfortable in half second increments. Now you got to go find something that lives in quarter seconds. This is kind of the next thing. I don't know. It just feels wrong to kind of like acknowledge that that's where the headspace is at. But
it's true though.
But it is. It's like
that is, in my opinion, what separates an elite level competitor from a person like myself who just likes going and shooting guns for fun.
And so when you talk about why would you do something like that, I think people get here chasing that. Like they have normalized, 0.15 splits with an open gun and a red dot, and it's just normal now. But they wanted the excitement and
Adam, face it, you're chasing the high.
Oh yeah, I'm an adrenaline junkie for sure. I was racing dirt bikes last weekend, right? Like
back on that horse. Huh?
Yeah,
he learned his lesson.
100%. I'm back. But yeah, trying to find that.
If anybody
thrill
remembers, at least one or two podcasts ago, we were talking about Adam's motorcycle injury.
Yes,
that was quite severe, actually, but.
It wasn't that bad.
I mean, it was the most phenomenal fracture I've ever seen in a textbook, out of a textbook.
Adam, I saw the X-ray. It was gross.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
you may never
two
run
surgeries,
again, son.
9 screws, 48 stitches.
Motorcycle injuries are like cleaning your garage out. It's probably going to happen once a year.
Adam checked off his 2024 injury.
And I hope that's it.
I'll take these all day. I only got so many broken legs left in me, but yeah, it's chasing that headspace between there, that kind of, or if you've seen the Matrix movies where everything goes into slow motion, that's some of what a shooter experiences at a high level. And once that gets normal, you kind of got to speed it up / slow it down to get back there again.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, okay, question more on the tactics side of things, if you will. You were just dry firing your revolver there, and you were holding it, not the way that you would hold a Glock or a 1911. Is there a universally agreed upon way in which one holds a revolver when they shoot it yet, or is there
traditionally taught? It would be.
Finger across the thumbs, and there's all this stuff.
So you would hold it with this, with your strong hand, then support hand would come in and cross the thumbs over the top.
Yeah.
Like even you watch Jerry Micklick videos, that's the way he would teach you to shoot it too. The way I'm gonna shoot it is more of I haven't seen anybody else do this grip, so I'm gonna claim that I came up with this, but lots of people put gas pedals on their auto pistols, so essentially a thumb shelf that you can push on the side. Well, that looks like a gas pedal to me, so I'm going to put my support thumb on there and push on it, and I'm going to put my strong hand thumb in behind it, and I'm going to stack it just like my auto pistol grip, so that I can get as high on it as I can, probably higher than I would on an auto pistol, and then eventually the spur on this hammer is not long for this world.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, because there's a clearance issue there. But essentially, because just due to physics, this thing is going to recoil. The higher relative to center that you can get on this thing and support it, the less recoil there's going to be.
Well, that's the lever you're giving that. Yeah.
So that is the grip that I'm at least going to start with until I decide that's a bad idea.
But be careful not to drag that support thumb on the old cylinder there, bud.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Especially not on the front.
Yeah.
Like when I see people cross their thumbs or they try to do a traditional auto grip like this, where they have their thumb along the frame. If your thumb is in front of the cylinder when that thing goes off,
Not
there
bueno.
is
Oh, yikes.
there is high pressure there.
A little gas cutting.
Yep.
Yeah, a little flame cutting.
So
up the
that's
front.
also my, keeping, that's my thumb stop, keeping thumbs behind the fire.
You ever get got by a plasma cutter?
No.
I got
I don't
got
think
by a
you-
muzzle brake before.
Can you get got by a plasma cutter?
I don't know. I haven't, but I always wondered what it'd feel like.
I think it would. I don't know that you'd feel much. I think you'd smell burnt hot dogs, and you would have a life-changing event.
Adam.
Hold your thumb there for too long, you might feel the same.
I'll tell you what, on like a Smith X frame with a 460 or 500, there's enough gas volume coming out of it that'll deglove you.
And so, like, for the tactical questions, like, I think there's a size of revolver that could be efficient. And I think this is probably getting towards the maximum of it. When you start talking about those larger calibers, the 500, the 460, the X frame revolver, they're so massive. I think despite what those cartridges can do ballistically, I think they're too big to fill the role, similar to the Desert Eagle. Like the Desert Eagle, like checks all the boxes, but it's too big to do, in theory, what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the 629, 627 size of revolver, I think is the biggest one that I would deem practical.
Yep.
It's meaty, but it's not beyond
Yeah.
control or fathoming just handling it and using it.
Yeah. And like, I kind of subscribe to the Thunder Ranch adage of Clint Smith is kind of famous for. He's not like, well, what gun would I choose to fight with? It was, if I ended up with this gun in a fight, could I fight with it? And that's kind of how I look at this. I would choose this gun defensively for nothing. Like I have many, we've established, I have many pistols that I would get to before I got to this one. So I see this right just as a practical shooting competition tool. I wouldn't use it by choice for any of those things, but if I ended up with, if it was the one that was within arm's reach when it went down, like I absolutely think it's a super effective tool, and it can shoot it just as accurately as anything else. But it
Better than a
definitely
stick.
has its limitations.
Better than a stick or even a sword.
As a Southpaw individual, the controls of this
Don't love it.
gun are definitely not conducive for you being fast.
I'm not going to beat Jerry's reload record. That's for sure. The odds are stacked against me.
As a right-handed person, having the swing gate open to the left is advantageous. It seems a little bit backwards.
The way Jerry does it, and he has a video showing you how to do this, but he with his strong hand, he pushes the thumb latch, opens the gun, and then he supports the whole gun with his support hand that does all the action. The firing hand grip gets the moon clip and loads it. And as soon as he drops this and it starts to go in, that hand starts to come back to the grip while he's waiting for this thing to fall in. And then the support hand is the one that closes it again while he's still building this grip, and then he gets it on board at the last second.
There's so much going on there.
There's a
Whereas
lot.
for me
It's
to do that, I
crazy.
have an extra hand switch in there to do that same thing, and I still haven't entirely figured out how I'm going to close it.
I have an
consistently.
honest question for you, and you can tell me I'm not going to answer it if you don't want to. Have you attempted the fastest reload you can do on this yet?
Oh no, I got all this together in one place like 2 weeks ago, and I brought it to the match just to like see how bad it was to start with.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too bad, but like it's gonna
What I'm wondering
take
is,
some work.
have you been in your basement yet?
No,
Okay.
nope.
So you are that much of a consummate professional. You're like, I'm not there yet. I'm
No.
not. Okay.
I made these dummy cartridges for this episode, but they're really for dry fire in like December.
I understand. That's how regimented he is, people. I can't stress this enough.
If you want to shorten winter, a lot of people don't like winter. I don't associate with that. I mean, I like winter, but if you want to shorten winter, set yourself a goal for by spring, and it'll just breeze right by.
I understand.
So
Or
Yep.
go someplace tropical.
Like Rio Salado.
So yes.
That's a great range.
But yeah, so I haven't really done. I tried it at a match one time. The first stage went okay. The second stage, I was definitely had a moon clip in one hand, and I was trying to push the magazine button that wasn't there with the other hand.
Oh, man.
No.
Oops. And I got that on video. So it didn't go horrible.
Damn gun doesn't work.
There's tons of potential, but there is a lot of repage that is in. I'm on a collision course with.
Does
for
anybody
sure.
make a left?
No.
Nothing for a lefty.
No.
Golly, there's an.
Welcome to our struggle. You know,
Well,
it's your world. We're just living in it.
I got 2 lefty girls.
I'm sorry.
the question I have next is involving sighting systems.
Oh boy.
That's where I was going.
Oh,
No red dots
Can
on
Can I ask one thing real quick?
Wait, no,
before
you
we
proceed. But I was just
Well, I'm going to let Mark
couldn't
go.
help but notice.
before
Yeah,
we
Mark,
get to
please,
sighting
you
It's
go.
time
systems.
for everyone.
Adam, when I was looking at your grip, and I'm not a big gun modifier person, right? But when I was looking at your grip and how you were resting your thumb on, I don't even know what that part is. What is this part? Does it have a name?
Shield. Cylinder shield.
Like, what if that? There's just not a lot of real estate there. Like, what if it was a little bit wider? Like, to me, it looked like you were just kind of like half on it, you know?
Like, I
if
don't.
If it had,
You
if it
trying
was,
to trying to design a new frame?
He's going to
Yeah.
have a problem as a lefty with if there was more standoff to that shield, it's now going to compromise his holstering. It's going to push the firearm further away from his body.
It doesn't matter, even if you're a righty, it's the same problem.
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
I think what Mark was asking is, do we get the old MIG welder out and lay a bead?
Well, I thought you were
I
going to
would
ask
not make this.
about the grip. Like
I couldn't bear the thought it would have to be ticked.
we've talked before about like grips and how like things, how things feel in the store. They put this grip on here because it's squishy.
Yeah.
It feels good in the store. It's got the finger grooves. It's like, oh, it feels good in my hand.
A lot
Remember-
of control.
I don't like
Yeah.
that.
I'm going to put one of Jerry's signature grips on here, and that was kind of like we were talking about in the 1911 episode, where it's like, well, if somebody just kind of put like sandpaper on their hands and wore down a 2x4,
Just long enough.
that's essentially what Jerry's grip, his signature revolver grip is. It's like
Oh,
a
yeah.
broom handle that slides on here.
Doesn't it have these
had
finger
no-
grooves?
no finger grooves.
Man, I hate
and
finger
no
grooves.
texture. It is smooth because he's like, this thing has to move in my hand so much, and
Yeah.
you get it wrong half the time. He's like, I want it to be able to slide around in my hand so I can get it to
Yeah.
the right spot.
Well, and then he just uses his human vice grips to hold it in place when it's there.
My favorite part about that grip is if you were to like grip shop and you were to remove the JM and the lightning bolt from it, and you were like, I'm looking for some like accoutrement for my Smith & Wesson N frame or L frame. You're like paging through and you're looking at all the different options out there. That one you would expect to cost $4
yeah.
because it is featureless.
Oh, yeah.
And he does the same thing to his AR grips too,
Yeah.
which I love.
Yeah. He sands down an A2 AR-15
Yep.
pistol grip so that it is smooth.
And no grooves, no embossments, not just like a thing that my hand sits on while I'm shooting.
The
like
beauty
a-
is in the
if I can-
simplicity.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, if I can grip it, it can grip me, and I don't like that. Like he wants it to be able to move.
It makes
Hey.
sense.
I put a Hogue grip sleeve on my Glock for the first 3-gun competition I ever shot.
I mean, I wasn't going to tell anybody, but if you want to own that,
I did.
We've all had those moments.
I did.
I haven't put one of those. on
You
the Glock
you
ever.
were the first guy I knew that had aluminum oxide on a grip.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And when I saw that gun, I was like, I want that. And so what I did is I started putting aluminum oxide on grips.
Let's glue sand to our guns. There's an idea.
Yeah. That's funny.
Okay.
What was your question, Jim?
Optics.
Yeah.
Well, it was Ryan's question. He just,
Are you, from a classification standpoint, limited to your irons? Can you put a dot on there?
Currently in USPSA, there is only one revolver division, and it is an iron-sighted division.
Okay.
They actually, like as we speak, there is or was a survey that went out to the membership asking if people wanted to allow red dots into that division. the word is like they did a informal poll at nationals last year. They like went around and asked every single competitor with a revolver specifically like, hey, do you want red dots in this division? And supposedly what they all said was yes.
Okay.
But when you put that survey out to the members, you're also starting to ask like all the, yeah, exactly. So now you ask all the people who don't shoot that division and they're like, no, you're not a real revolver shooter if you don't shoot iron sights, even though this person is never going to shoot a revolver in their life, you know, so everybody gets their opinion. So I think someday, maybe in USPSA, you will be able to. In a related sport called ICOR, International Confederation of Revolver Enthusiasts, it's basically USPSA for revolvers. In ICOR, I think they have 3 divisions. I think they have an open, which allows optics and porting. There's a limited, which would be this. There's a 3rd division, which I'm not sure. I think it's the snubby division.
J-frames, LCRs, things like this.
So smaller framed revolvers.
Yeah, that kind of draws its essence and existence from bug.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in
What's
ICOR,
bug,
you
Jim?
can
Ryan?
shoot red dots.
Bug is
Backup gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in IDPA, another action shooting sport, more defensive oriented, there's the main match that everybody knows and loves, and then everyone got the idea, hey, you know what would be cool is if we all got our Glock 26s and our snub nose revolvers and
It does sound
whatever
fun.
else. We always did it as a side match when I was shooting IDPA. Maybe it's a bigger thing now, but it was kind of the match after the match. We had the really little guns, the bug guns, backup guns. So revolvers are they're prominent-ish in IDPA. I haven't shot IDPA in a long time, but there is a what they call stock service revolver and enhanced service revolver. Stock service revolver is essentially you can't load it with moon clips. You have to use speed loaders or speed strips. Or enhanced service revolver, you can shoot with moon clips. And that was a quasi-popular division when I was shooting that sport, but I think that lives on there. And then you can still shoot revolvers with red dots in Steel Challenge. So the speed shooting Steel Challenge sport, that's fairly wide open in what you could do to a revolver there. And
when you talk about ICOR too, this is like you want to see some very eclectic designs. Things that like the only semblance this gun bears to a revolver is the fact that it has a cylinder and a hammer.
Really?
And even the
like this
hammer.
grip.
Yeah.
How much can you change it?
So these guys are wild. I think it's fascinating firearms innovation. Some of the more notable things that I've seen, some ICOR builds, Adam mentioned ported. So this gun has a barrel and it has a housing for the op rod, and it has like shape to it and contouring and dimension. Straight tube barrel. Op rod just hangs out, like wasted space, wasted stuff, don't need it there. Barrels can be heavier diameter. Barrels can have a muzzle brake attached to the end of them. The coolest things, though, are shortened cylinders. So Adam's gun, if we were to lay a 38 short Colt to the side of the cylinder at approximately the place that it would headspace on, you have almost the length of the loaded cartridge. You have certainly the length of the case. That is just wasted space.
Okay.
And I don't think for Adam's sake it's really going to be a detriment, but that wasted space is just jump. That bullet has time to yaw, cant, gas slip can occur. There's some choking in there, but not a ton. And they'll crop that cylinder down to absolutely the minimum dimension required. Sure. And then they'll elongate we'll call it the chamber, the part of the barrel in which the bullet first arrives into the barrel to meet the cylinder that's been shortened. So when you see the 45 ACP revolvers, 45 ACP is not a lengthy case. It's kind of a short, squat fella. They'll crop that cylinder and then they'll make them for 45 gap because it's legal in the cartridge or the caliber.
The most successful 45 gap ever was.
Yeah, correct. Exactly correct. That's another lead balloon that we should talk about sometime. 45 GAP. Really smart. But so it has a cylinder. The hammers often are completely bobbed and gone because they just snag points that can cause problems. They'll extend this, and that 929 has a extended release on it too.
Oh,
but
sure. Yep.
they'll extend this. The triggers will be worked over. Like if you put a weight gauge on this thing, I mean, yeah, you're right. It's like 12 pounds. They'll work those over to be as light as they possibly can be relative to hammer mass to make sure that we have, an explosion that occurs when we want it to. And just like full Monty builds and like really weird looking things. Like if you were to give the wheel gun to the 1950s Cadillac, yeah, Jimmy's going to pull one up here to look at just like I-Core open revolver. Really interesting things. Hot rodded to the max. The short cylinder thing is the neat part. And then the 929 has a shortened cylinder, if I remember this correctly.
It does.
Yep. So that borrows its lineage from that. So shorter cylinder, right? We're going to be firing 9mm out. You can see how the barrel extends deeper into the cylinder cutout of the frame. And again, shortening that gap.
Okay.
And then those cylinders are tuned, and that gap is set very specifically, and they put a ton of thought into the performance of the cartridge and the gun as a system to maximize efficiency, accuracy, shootability, etc.
Well, and then this cylinder is titanium. Because remember, when we talk about trigger pull weight, there's the whole mechanism that you have to pull here.
Mm-hmm.
So if we reduce weight of the cylinder itself, that takes less effort. So the 929 uses a titanium cylinder, so that lock work takes less energy, and you could tangibly feel a difference between a titanium cylinder and then this steel one. Like it's just more mass moving around, similar to lightening a slide
Yeah.
in an auto pistol.
This has seemingly more benefit, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
most of the photos I'm finding were taken with a toaster, so
Yeah.
That's because most of the people who entered that competition space existed when the best cell phone out there at the time was a Motorola Razr.
I see.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
So Adam makes a very interesting notation there about mechanical effort to spin that cylinder. Everything that happens with that gun is under Adam's finger. There and there's mechanical assist, right? We have a lever that moves up and pushes, and there are springs, etc. But the mass of that titanium cylinder is less. He has less work to do, and all that comes into, we come back full circle about figuring out your timing as a shooter in order to go from target to next target and execute shot break at the right time.
Well, and that's what Jerry said when he recently set the record with the Defender XL.
Yeah.
The pistol he spec'd for that, he did a plate rack speed record. So 6 plates, bing, 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 down the line. He spec'd a scandium frame revolver, so a light frame revolver with a titanium cylinder, because he was going to be moving. He wanted to be able to start and stop the gun with minimal effort in all that happening in something that is traditionally a big block of milled steel.
So I got to ask then, did that wheel gun not appeal to you from an aesthetic standpoint, a cost standpoint, the cartridge?
It's not USPSA legal.
Oh,
because it's
sure,
ported.
Sure.
And it's a dealer exclusive, so I couldn't get one.
I understand. But the
What
USPSA...
What if it wasn't ported?
Oh, then I wanted it. I wanted it hard. You couldn't get them through the industry program, especially since they used our dot. I sent the inquiry out there. I was like, hey, could we get one of those? Because we collabed. And it sounded like even employees at Smith & Wesson weren't allowed to purchase those.
now it's just coveted.
Yeah, now it's unobtainium.
Oh.
I know.
Sounds intentional.
That's okay. I'll wait for somebody who paid full price to decide that they need to consolidate their collection, and
That away.
Bingo.
it's like the way I get most 1911s.
Is that top ported?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not even something that can be necessarily undone.
No.
It's
It's Van Comped.
Dang it.
Yeah. I had another thought and then it was gone.
I think the ammo part's really cool. I think that
Oh, I got it. I think the other part that's cool about this is it appeals a little bit. You have to be, whereas like now in the sport, you really have to be an athlete to excel at open or limited carry optics. It's very much vision, execution, and then agility. In the revolver side, this is more like, this is the mechanical nuts and bolts. Like you this is bullets and powder and brass, and you're manipulating it a whole lot more, where in some of those divisions, you maybe do one reload in a course. Here, you're going to be breaking the gun down using all of its parts multiple times throughout.
Well, it just seems like there's more
stage.
to that reload. I'm not to minimize,
No,
what you
but
guys do.
there are
but
steps, and they got to be done properly in sequence.
Yeah. I mean, everything everyone does in single stack, open, carry, all that stuff, when you do a reload, like everything is to try to avoid your strong hand moving at all from its firing. I mean, in this one, the gun is like flopping all over. Yeah.
And like the first thing that jumped out to me when I shot that match for the first time with it, the hardest part is letting go of the trigger. Like pulling the trigger on target isn't necessarily the problem, but getting it let go and pulling again.
sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
Did you have some dead strokes?
I did not, but I was like, to speed this up, the first cut to make is resetting the trigger. That's where, like, on every pistol review now, everyone's like, oh, here, check out the reset, how small short the reset is. The reset is the full stroke on that thing. You got to let it all the way out. And some of what trigger spring kits are for this are the return spring, so that thing can feed
Just
back
like
out to reset it.
Okay.
So I think like the biggest meat on the bone shooting the thing fast is getting the trigger, pulling it but letting go again and starting to pull. So it's analog in a digital world.
Yeah. And in some ways, I suppose you're talking about like the advantages that you have going to a modern auto pistol kind of sterilize like real ability. In that you have a follow-up shot on tap right quick if you need it, or a fresh mag with 24 rounds right quick on tap if you need. Like you have to be very much cognizant and in control of action, movement, target count. All like you really have to up your just all the things that you would think you would need to be a good pistol shooter. Like they have to just be elevated simply.
Well, and what I'm looking forward to, other revolver shooters have told me when you normalize this,
it just
and you get
better.
like trucking with this, when you go back to an auto pistol, that's like going to warp speed.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, all
it
that
has
stuff.
to be. I was thinking that.
I'm looking forward to that. That'll
Feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never
round and round we go.
I never achieved that when I went from manual division to auto division.
Would you like to?
In no, I meant in pump guns.
Oh,
You don't feel like you
No, so the
increased
problem
in speed?
What was an interesting thing, because I'm a lazy shooter, ultimately like I found the solution through minimal effort. I was holding my shotgun in a way that its recoil action would unlock it, and then I would take up the rest. And that was by accident. That wasn't by intention. When I switched back to an auto-loading shotgun, my gun failed to function because of how I was holding it. And it took me months to figure that out. Every practice session, my gun would work fine. Bring it to a match, my gun would fail. And I was like, what is happening? Like, maintenance schedules changed, maintenance styles changed, whatever, couldn't figure it out. And then I'm watching a slow-mo video of myself with my Benelli firing on a plate rack. And I'm watching me not hold the gun like I do my pump. Pull the trigger, gun goes flying rearward, soak up all the energy that the gun has. Because I'm working on the transition at that point in time in anticipation of that plate falling down. Gun fails to function because I interrupt the stroke. And it was like this aha moment. I'm like, oh, you idiot. You have to hold the firearm. I wasn't doing that. And so like I never got really good with a pump gun and then got really, really good with an auto gun. I just got pretty good with a pump gun and then I stayed mediocre. So
we had a saying when I had a blue collar job, you give the laziest guy the crappiest job and he'll find the easiest way to do it.
yeah. That was
That's
the only,
you.
That was the only
Like
way
you found the most efficient way to pump a pump gun.
Yeah, that was the only way I found measurable success in pump division in tactical shotgun, which Adam's bringing back.
It's back.
That's another show.
I know it.
Well, maybe, we'll leave that for a different discussion.
I think I would have gone to that if I would have known it was coming.
Hey, there's more of them.
That's good. I still have all my stuff.
You'll need it.
Adam, all cool stuff, man.
Neato.
There's a lot to these old revolvers.
I don't know. Maybe we'll have some adventures and learn some stuff along the way. But we're just kind of stepping off into the unknown right now. But I mean, I got the stuff. I got the load developed. We're just all that's left is the shooting.
The mastery.
Thank God I had shell plates.
Yeah. I borrowed Ryan's tool head.
When you borrowed a pistol too.
Oh, yep. I gotta give that back, John. I'm giving this. It'll be back next Tuesday. But you'll already have it back by the time this is out.
Neat gun though. That's cool.
That is cool.
That's a neat gun. Smith & Wesson's only done a handful of auto pistol cartridges in wheel guns, and they were either like the 610, that was the 10 millimeter.
Yeah, that gun was cool.
Yep.
They did 627s and 38 Super.
That I did not know.
That's out there. A very limited run of 38 Super 627s.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, and the 929 and the 625 JM and kind of the 627 that Adam has, they were just destined for competition.
Yep.
627 was kind of a hybrid gun. It was like, you could hunt with this, you could use this for duty, or you could shoot competitively with it. But the 625 JM and the 929, they're competition pistols.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
Or that
Ryan,
was their
this
intent.
is an example of what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
This cylinder has been
cylinder.
shortened,
Yes.
and they brought the barrel extension or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. They brought it back to meet the cylinder. Well, I didn't have to look up Motorola Razr images on Google for it. It's right here.
That's a pretty pedestrian I-core build.
Yeah.
That's standard.
Yeah. I would say that's fairly contemporary to what you would see right now. They have the longer barrel. I think people like the longer barrel for the quote-unquote sight radius. I don't think that debate's neither here nor there. But also, they can get major power factor or minor power factor velocity with a smaller powder charge with the longer barrel.
Sure.
Is this how you were holding it? I'm a righty. Was this it?
Yep. That's how I was holding it.
I would not be able to do that with my little J frame.
Not so much.
Would not recommend.
Not so much. That and your J-frame is mean.
I like it.
Scandium framed. 357.
Those hurt so bad.
Jim he
Hornady critical defense. Throw him in.
You know how Elmer Keith used to wake up in the morning and shoot at that outhouse at like 700 yards?
I'm not familiar.
Oh, well, that was his thing. Like, he'd get out of his cabin, like, smoking coffee and just rip one at an outhouse. Jim has this Scandium frame 357 that it's like some people wake up and do calisthenics in the morning. Jim subjugates himself to enormous recoil.
That's one way to wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You shoot it every day?
Not every day, no.
Oh, but often.
Yeah, because I like it.
We got to get him one of them snub nose X frames.
I want to get one of those. Was it the Model 19 carry comp?
Sure.
So it's a smaller, it's kind of a medium. It's like a Glock 19 sized
Yep.
357, but it's got a big port
Yep.
compensator on the end of the barrel.
My old boss used to call that a flashlight.
Yes.
Yeah. He called revolvers, and he looked at ported wheel guns. He goes, "Oh, it's got a flashlight on it." Yeah.
Whenever I shoot my revolver, though, I will say, I don't know why, I hit basically everything I shoot at.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I have no idea.
They shoot
That
good.
is
They
the
point.
assignment.
They point like doesn't even have a rear sight.
No, it's just
Really?
a trough.
It's
Maybe
just
you
a
should go
trough with a.
full Adam and exploit this skill of yours, Jim.
I will not.
That was definitive.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
I can't do that. We're built different.
This is true. Adam, thank you so much. Thanks for bringing your stuff in. Thanks for bringing other people's stuff in. Ryan, always a pleasure. Jim, great to see you.
That was a long.
Saw you guys.
I actually had to turn around to make sure you were still there.
It's great to see you. And then I was just going to say, I saw both of you guys yesterday. Well, and we did our little bit of squirrel hunting. It was
It's
fun.
nice to see you as well, Mark.
So nice to see you, everybody. I'm looking in the camera right now. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Until next time, happy hunting and shooting. Revolver questions, reach out to Adam directly. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
See ya.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.